Hey, welcome to the BK Show podcast. This is episode number 46, and today I am joined by SEO legend Nick Eubanks. Nick is the co-founder of venture studio Super Limited, where they have brands such as Agency Builder, In Between the Lines Therapy, Driven Entrepreneurs, ADD Hero, From the Future, Traffic Think Tank, Launchpad PR, Link Builder, InScope Video, Underfit Clothing, and many more. Honestly, Nick is an absolute machine. He works harder than you, I guarantee that. I had the opportunity to hang out with Nick at Elliott Rose Mastermind a couple months back, and he blew me away. The guy is super, super smart, and I really just wanted to get his genius on this show, tell his story of how he got to where he is and some of the things he's working on and where he's going from here. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Nick Eubanks. Hey, real quick, as I mentioned in the last podcast, my son was indeed born that day. His name is Carson. He was born a few weeks early, but he was still 9 pounds, 7 ounces. An absolute monster, an absolute bundle of joy. Mom and baby are doing great. So thank you for all of the messages. I appreciate all of them. I will also have another big announcement coming in the next couple weeks. So if you're not on my newsletter already, head over to thebkshow.com or benknagendorf.com or click the link in the show notes. Jump on that email list. I don't email very often, but when I do, I try to give as much value as possible. And I've got a pretty big announcement coming up. So hop on that email list and I'll let you know about it as soon as I can. But let's jump into today's episode with Nick Eubanks. Nick Eubanks, welcome to the show, buddy.
Dude, thanks for having me, Ben.
So I got introduced to you from Twitter, but you're a legend, man. You're an SEO legend. I'm sure that makes you feel super uncomfortable when anybody tells you.
Yep, definitely does.
But you're a goat, really. You're up there. You're a legend, and like I followed you on Twitter, and you were speaking things in SEO I didn't even understand. And I had a website that was kind of gifted to me, and I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. I thought it was worth, a 3x multiple, like every e-commerce website. And that's what, like the first thing I ever reached out to you. I think I paid you, I don't know, $300 for like 15 minutes of your time. And in that 15 minutes, you made me, like $12,000 or $13,000 I sold that site for, rather than like $600 or $700 is what I thought it was worth. And so like that was well worth the $300 paying you, let alone like you get off the call and you're like, I want to make sure I give you value. So then you hop on Twitter, follow me, and send me like 14 links of things to go watch from you. Like that was like my first introduction to a guy who just gives incredibly. And then I met you at Elliott Rose Mastermind, and we shot the shit for a while. Every single hot seat that was up there, you had like 47 ideas for the person on the hot seat when it came to their business. I was just, you remind me of me, but like on crack. I don't even know how to explain it. Like you're so quick, and your brain is moving so fast. And, I like to listen to things on 2X. I listened to like 4 podcasts with you this morning. Listening to you on 2X is like insane.
I can't even imagine.
It all came at me really fast. It made mowing the lawn a little more fun this morning, I'll say that. But anyway, you're a legend. I appreciate having you on. I thank you a ton for helping me move that website that I didn't really have a clue what I was going to do with. But I needed to get you on here so I could figure out where the hell you even began, because you're doing so much right now. How many businesses do you own right now?
Like owner, like have like a meaningful stake in. It's 15. 15 operating businesses, and I mean some, like 3 of those are pre-revenue, but they are operating. I realize that doesn't make a ton of sense, but it just means that we're pouring money into them. So one day we hope that the people who are working on them and building them and getting paid by other ventures that are making money are able to have those companies make money too. So knock on wood there.
Well, that's a lot, right? And so I'm sure that didn't like start with 15. You probably started with 1. But I want to know your journey. I want to know how you got there. Right before the call, you were telling a story of how you were slanging drinks from your mother at 7 years old. Can you just like talk me through some of the things you were doing as a kid?
I just remember like always like as far back as I can remember always like being interested in like making money. It's just like, how do I like this is the currency that like gets all of these things. Like it just made sense to me at a very young age. And I remember, getting introduced somehow to the idea of a lemonade stand. And I was like, well, if they're selling lemonade down the street for 60 cents, like I don't know how to make better lemonade. Like I don't know how to do something different than water and sugar and lemons. And so the first pass was like, maybe I'll make my sign bigger. And then it was up, maybe, the spot in front of my house is actually not the best place where the traffic actually comes and lines up. So I'm actually going to go down 2 blocks to the stoplight. And so like, it was just like little things. Like it ended up with me getting to a place where I made a paper mache head, or my dad actually made it more. So I think I was more so just there, but it was a paper mache head. The thing had to be like 5 feet tall. of a moon with black sunglasses. And I would put that on my head and have my little sister who I'd recruited, was 2.5 years younger than me, to work the register. And I would stand out there on the corner and, instead of selling iced tea instead of selling lemonade, I wanted to bring a new product to market. So my mom made this mint iced tea that I thought was fantastic. I don't know if I would ever had other mint iced tea, but to me, it was great. So I was going to start selling that. And I got to a place, like I was at one point, I was 7, 8 years old. I was doing $100 a day in sales, at $1 a piece. The biggest thing I had to worry about was like bugging my mom to make more of her mint iced tea. And that just always stuck with me. I mean, it turned into selling tons of weed in college, and then getting an internship. I mean, the digital journey all began when I got an internship as a stockbroker at Morgan Stanley. I was just a sophomore in college. I went to work for old broker that had been there for 50 years that wanted to tap into my college's internship program, and was making 200 phone calls a day, just hammering the phones and getting really comfortable with rejection.
The kid stuff fascinates me. You're set, right? I have 2 6-year-olds in this house. To imagine one of them a year from now understanding to move to the corner, and you sound a lot like Gary Vee. Gary Vee talks about doing this stuff as a kid too, of spotting those opportunities. But you're talking at 7 years old, moving to the corner, having your sister work for you. I can't picture that with the 2 6-year-olds that are here. But even looking back, I had my friend Tony Yu from Vessi Footwear on here. He was flipping fireworks in elementary school because they couldn't have them in Canada.
I remember kids selling other kids in school selling gobstoppers or what were the really sour ones, crybabies or warheads, atomic warheads, selling those. These were the candies that weren't allowed in school. So this was these were the 8, 9-year-old drug dealers selling the candy out of their lockers. 50 cents arbitrage. They're paying 25 at the candy store down the street, and anyway, I remember just always being very inspired. And the funniest thing about looking back at, there are 2 main communities of people that have sort of stuck with me, in terms of entrepreneurial journey and impact, and from in terms of a source of reflection. And one is the kids that I grew up with at all the different schools. So I think I went to 9 schools in the 12 years of high school. But the kids there was always those kids that were selling shit at all those schools. So there was Nintendo games or candy. I remember middle school was concert tickets. But there's always those kids, and those kids, that group, that cohort of children, and then the ones I went to military school with, everybody, all of those people have fallen to there's this fork that I was just talking about this with a friend of mine who I went to military school with yesterday. He was here, but there's this crazy extremism that seems to exist within those two sort of groups, and they all either go on to become incredible entrepreneurs, or they become drug addicts, or they're dead, usually from drugs. But there's that extreme, and I definitely started going down that path as a kid, where I was getting into fights, staying out, running away, stealing cars, bad kid, just, being a relatively terrible human being. And then found out that the desire for chaos can actually just be repointed to be productive.
I've never heard a phrase like that, desire for chaos. It seems like I get personally infatuated with things, and I'll go as far down that rabbit hole as I can, and I can point that to, like you said, it's funny how there's a lot of people I've had on this show that all dealt marijuana back in the day. I was one of those people, trying to figure out how to make some money but also make all mine free. But anyway, I would go deep down that rabbit hole, or deep into, 18, 19, 20, I drank a lot. I did a lot of drugs, and and then, pointing that towards business has been a godsend for me. But I didn't understand that as a kid. Where did you get insight at as 7 years old to sell shit? Because I look back, my dad was a factory worker. My mom was a CNA. Prior to me finding business, I was a factory worker. My wife was a CNA. And so back then I didn't know any better. I would go mow lawns, or I would get a paper out, which is, my dad had one in the middle of the night. I had my first paper out at 11 years old, riding my bike around town doing that. I had that same urge to get money. Where did you find the urge to sell shit and arbitrage things?
So my mom was a realtor up until I was probably 7 or 8. And my dad was a salesman for SAP. By the time I was, I think, 6, so he would have been 32. He had been promoted to partner. At the time, it was Price Waterhouse. That was back before it was PwC. It was just Price and Waterhouse. And he became the youngest principal. This is in corporate history, like the youngest principal at Price Waterhouse at the time, and used that to sort of pole vault himself into SAP. and just was this big like king shit software salesman. Like he was just a big deal. He's a big presence, very charismatic. And a lot of, I think my personality has been shaped and formed by, him and who he is as a person and how he acts. And business has just been such a big part of his life. Like the guy's a born and bred salesman. He's been the CEO of 3 companies. Like it was just, I had that presence around at like a very young age. I didn't have it from like really 10 on, but it was there in those like very early years.
It sounds like your very first step into anything in life was being a salesman as well. I would assume that's, kudos to watching your dad.
Yeah. I've always I think I went through a period where like I tried to convince myself that like I didn't like sales or I wasn't a good salesperson. And it always came back to, no, I actually really do like this. And I think it's one of those things where you like something so you get good at it, or you are good at something because you like it. And I think I'm good at it because I like it.
Where do you go from there? How do we get into entrepreneurship from there?
So I'm making all these cold calls, and there was a broker who had a private practice within Morgan Stanley called the Wiley Group, and it was like around the corner from Ned Saxman, the broker I was making all these calls for, at his desk, and his secretary was like sat right outside in like a cubicle outside of his like big nice glass office, and she was like walking around the office one day asking questions about like how to like add an image into an email. And email was still this was 2004. This was 2003. End of 2003. So email is big, but it's not what it is now. Like there were 2 EMPs back then. I think it was constant contact and vertical response, and that was it. And like those were like, it was a big deal if you even like knew your way around those very primitive, email tools. Most of it was just done blasting Outlook with a bunch of extensions and potentially running some IP scrapers or running IP proxies behind. And so I ended up helping her out. It's funny. We're still like friends and talk today. Her name's Bernadette, like very, very funny and ironic. But so like me and Bernadette starts coming over more and more and asking for help more and more. And then she introduces me to Jim one day, her boss. And Jim asked me to lunch one day and tells me about this idea he has to essentially build a campaign that we're going to send out via email, but it's going to be all cold email. And it's going to be to a pretty targeted list of people. And we know where the people work, but we don't know who they are or what their names are. We sure as hell don't know their email addresses. So he presents this problem, and I'm like, I've got some ideas. I think I can figure that out. And so he hires to essentially pay me twice what Ned was paying me per hour. And so Ned's very upset, but I go work for Jim. I'm like, cool, no more phone calls. I get to like do tech stuff. So what I end up doing is actually pioneering the first ever mass email campaign, cold email campaign sent on behalf of Morgan Stanley to pass through compliance and actually get sent out. So what we did was the target audience was the White Plains, New Jersey location for Merck. That's where all of their senior and most tenured employees at the time were working. And there was like 7,000 of them there. The plan was figure out what the email addresses are of the people that work at that location. And that's the list of people we're going to be emailing this like fully designed like offer to receive some free information and a prospectus from the Wiley Group at Morgan Stanley. Main reason that he wanted them was based on some of the research that him and his analysts were able to do. Very talented young analysts, went on to do some big things. Was they were able to figure out that like these were people that if you're at Merck long enough to be like moved to this location or to be like among this leadership group, this cohort, that you have at least 15 years or 20 years of your 401k paid in. So like these people all have at least 600 grand in retirement savings that they could be giving me to invest on their behalf. So then the question becomes like, all right, how the hell you figure out who all these people are? Like LinkedIn didn't exist. So the idea was, well, we're going to call every single extension, and I'm going to have college students listen to the voicemail message when they say their name and type every iteration of what they think the spelling could potentially be. And then once I figured out what the email pattern was, which only takes a couple, because like back then there were email pings were a very good way to validate whether or not an email was deliverable or not. Now it doesn't do shit. But back then it worked really well. So we would, I had this army of college students. We'd run thousands of variations of people's spellings until we'd get positive pings back. And over time, over a couple months, we built this list up. The campaign got sent out. it was a very big success to the extent that Jim Wiley, within, I think by 2006 or 2007, like essentially had such a big book of business that he's now been running his own private equity investment thing for a while. So anyway, so that was my whole foray into digital. And I do like to believe that I had something to do with the Can Spam Act of 2004.
Well, certainly you have some problem solving skills that were spotted early on, like, having college students call and write down the names. And back then, whatever, like if you sent to a list of 200 and 100 of those were the wrong email, like it still delivered the other 100, or what was it like in the Wild West of email?
Yeah, no, it would, like, things would bounce back then. So you could be like, I'm going to send an email ping, like essentially like a spoof email. Like I'm going to send this request to go see if I can deliver it to this mail server to all these domains. And the ones that wouldn't be delivered would not be undeliverable. And then if you got one that had a successful ping back, then it's like, bam, like that's a good email address. Like that's a real email address that like you can deliver mail to.
Was there even like data on open rates, or like, was it 100%? I mean, was it kind of like SMS is now where everybody's opening them because they weren't getting very many emails?
Yeah. Email, but spam was, Can Spam Act came out literally that year. Like it was becoming a problem, but like the government stepped in, I think, before it got big enough, because the government very early on was like realized, this is a separate sort of ageist joke that maybe I'll make. But the government, I think, realized very, very early on, like, oh shit, this technology is so new that people are going to get scammed like no fucking tomorrow. Like this was the heyday of the Nigerian prince, like before it was common knowledge. Like back when it like probably had a 5% success rate, which is terrifying. If you think of like spam at scale. But yeah, so anyway, most of the old guys in SEO started in spam. Some are still in spam.
How does any of that shit work? Like my wife used to work at a big bank here in the Twin Cities, and she would come home every day just like, oh my God, today this happened. Somebody fell for this scam. And I'm like, how on earth do you get a phone call or an email that says like you won the lottery? You just have to send us your bank account information.
I have a very close friend who I'm not going to let listen to your podcast because of this, who is one of the most brilliant engineers I've ever met. I've worked with him for 15 years. He got taken by one of those tax scams. And the only reason, like, it hit me hard when I found out, like, I was just like, because like I had almost fallen for it like a year prior. And the reason was they get somebody who has very, very, like very strong spoken English, very domineering, like the way the scam works. And they're able to, and I don't know if this is hacked information or how they find it, but like if you have an open tax balance, whether it's corporate taxes, personal taxes, anything, but if you have any outstanding balance to the IRS, these people would call you, and 99% of the general public don't understand that the IRS will never call you under any circumstance. So these guys call you and they're like, this is such and such agent for the IRS. We've been authorized, based on your unpaid balance, we've been authorized to dispatch law enforcement to your immediate area. They'll be arriving in 15 minutes unless you pay, at least $10,000. You have to do it via certified check or a money order. Like there's just, you start sweating immediately. Like if that's you, you're like, oh, I do owe taxes. Fuck, is this? I don't know that the IRS wouldn't call me. I mean, I haven't paid my taxes. Am I going to get like, they prey on that fear. But yeah, I mean, he was taken for like 25 grand.
The fear response is interesting, right? As a Shopify business owner, somehow my email for Shopify is on, the apps, I'm sure, spread around. Everybody has access to it. Mm-hmm. If you're a developer, somehow, I'm not even sure how they get that, but you get emails, I would say weekly spoof emails of like, you didn't pay your bill this month. Click here to pay your bill. And if you just simply hit the drop down of like, where did this email come from? It's from a bullshit address, but like the email looks legit.
Think of like your parents, like, or like think of like that, like think of the boomer like league, like, they don't know to like, wait, what was the actual sending email, not the alias of the, like, I mean, it's crazy. Like, it's the same as like boomers click on everything. Like I've never had such successful MFA sites as we do, as the ones that are in all the senior spaces, because they can't distinguish between ads and they just click it all. It's wild. Like that's all going away. Like that's coming to a swift death with millennials moving into like the older ages and boomers beginning to drop off. And so I think
it exists in every vertical though, right? Like I own some Uniswap and Chainlink, and I get emails maybe once a month, maybe once every other month of like Uniswap's upgrading to blank. Just send your coins over here, and you know what I mean? And I'm just like, how did you even get my email in the first place? But it exists everywhere. And I think you're right that the younger kids, it's coming to an end. I'm a big fan of TikTok. That algorithm is fantastic. If you stumble into someone messing with one of those callers and you like it, you're going to see about 15 more of those because their algorithm's so good. And there's a lot of young kids just fucking with those type of callers, and it's hilarious to me.
Yeah, agreed.
So how do you go from figuring out how to do some email hacks and becoming the leader of the reason canned spam exists to moving into SEO? Where did that transition come?
So after that, I was like, cool, like I have this skill that I think I can get people to pay me for. So I started like doing consulting work, almost all like just referrals under the moniker of Nick Eubanks Solutions. So it was NES. I thought like just like Nintendo. I thought that was really cool. And so I got like a handful of my first clients while I was still in college, and just did little consulting projects sort of through junior and senior year. Like here and there, I still had a full-time job and was a full-time student. But, just sort of cut my teeth on stuff. And then it wasn't really until my first job out of college, actually, technically, it's my second job out. My first like corporate job out of college was I took a marketing manager position for a startup, like accounting stat, like a fintech. What we would call a fintech company now. Fintech was not a term back then in 2006, or wasn't as big of a term, but it was a Sarbanes-Oxley, like SOX 404, 302 compliance company. That's where I was really first introduced to like my first CMS.
Which CMS were you operating?
It's called CM Scribe. It was a .NET CMS. It was one of the early. The founder was brilliant. He was just so before his time. Like he was on all the latest Microsoft stacks. He was building his like all of these page layouts based on containers. So like you had all these inherited attributes. Like it was very smart. But it was super cumbersome to build templates. But then once they were built, it was awesome. So like I like learned how to hack my way around it to like get the URLs I wanted. Like I was just. Most of it was just logical. I was just like, and like, I've always been like sort of a design snob. I don't know, aesthetic snob person, like very much like love the, shape and form and pay a lot of attention to it. And hated like ugly URLs and like hated, like I remember very early on before I understood the idea of like entomology and how that like plays into natural language processing and SEO and all that shit. Just being like, this, how can developers build these beautiful websites with these query string URLs that stack into an infinity? Like why would they want to do that? Like, well, it works. I'm just querying the database. Like, yeah, it looks terrible. Why you don't see that? No, nobody looks at the URL. I look at the URL. Like, I remember those arguments early on. Just being in the old school of, I think being the old school of the internet. That was like the first decade of the internet, really. I mean, or the second, I guess it is. So shit was just moving really fast there. Figured out that if I matched content and I did a better job and built a better page than my competitors did, oftentimes without any links, that I could rank for these keywords, and started seeing like what types of different keywords I could build pages and rank this site. Back then it was aligngrc.com. It has since become Align Analytics. I think it maybe even has rebranded again since then. But I remember learning a bunch of stuff about that sort of ecosystem. And then at one point, I remember we moved into a new office, and I had moved into the city at that point because it was out in the suburbs. And a commute, they were like, "You're gonna have to be in the office every day out here." And it's like it was like an hour and a half commute each way. And I remember they're like, it wasn't every day. It was, "You're gonna have to be in the office 3 days a week." I remember doing the math and being like, an hour and a half each way, 3 days per week, 9 hours per day, 3 days per week. I did it. I was like, that's a month. That's a month out of the year that I'm going to spend driving to and from work. So I quit and started Automni, which was my first agency in 2007 with two partners. One was a web developer from Drexel, their computer science program. The other one was a dude that I used to buy weed from who taught himself CSS and HTML and some PHP. We took on a handful of clients. We got to like 5 or 6 people. Had a pretty baller office in Center City, and then like got to the place where you'd start managing like resources and profitability and understanding utilization. And I was 23, I didn't know any of that shit. So as things started to fall apart, we had built we cobbled together this CMS that we called what wasn't orbital, it was molecule. It was all built on Code Igniter though. And we sold that to, when we sold a site as a proof of concept to Dietz and Watson that they ended up being like, this is bubblegummy and simple enough. They're like, this is great for all of our, what are they called? Franchisees. So they ended up buying the company for that crappy piece of tech. And it was like, that was like a golden parachute for me. Cause like before, like the service side of the business, I had no idea what I was doing. And like, that was just about to like partnerships were falling apart. We were losing clients. Like that was just about to come collapsing down when that sold. So that was like a big win. In terms of like just getting lucky. I got recruited after that by a software guy here in Philly named Adam Schran. He's best known for his registry cleaner product from the late 90s. That was called Finally Fast. You probably have seen one of these commercials. Like, my computer used to be slow, but now it's finally fast. So finallyfast.com was his big win. Like 9 figures, like big win. And he had this idea to build Yelp in Japan. So he's like, hey, do you want to be the CEO of this company and build the CMS like from scratch and build a team and figure out how to get traffic and users in Japan? It's like, sure, it sounds fun. So we did that. Built Toshibako, which means like suggestion box, .jp. Got it to about 3 million visits a month in organic in 18 months. Sold it to Ziff Davis. Went and did e-commerce for 5 years. Left the e-com company to do the agency thing and got into the agency thing and was just like, man, I've got all these people that do all this stuff and I've got all these ideas. So like, I wonder how quickly I can just launch these ideas. And if I can find some model where I can launch ideas quickly and cheaply, and if they start working, I can put relatively low cost trainable talent. I can find people that have just enough of a skill set to install in them and support them with my agency on the sales and marketing side to either get them to a place where they can be sold or grown or be like, that's actually probably not worthwhile. And I'm just right now, all we're doing with Super Limited is trying to Pareto the whole thing. If for every 10 things we spin up, if 2 work and 8 fail, cool.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask you how do you find people that have just enough scale? How are you supporting them? But I want to hear about this e-commerce thing because I feel like when I saw you at Elliot's Mastermind, we didn't really talk a whole lot about e-commerce. I told you a few of the things I'm doing, and you were just like, "Yeah, all right, cool. You obviously know what you're doing." And then I heard a few podcasts this morning you were on before where you talked a little bit of e-commerce on there. You talked a little bit about Traffic Safety Store. How did that begin? How did you jump into e-commerce, and then really what made you get back out of e-commerce and do some of the things you're doing now?
I'm very much in e-commerce now with Underfit and have been for like almost 3 years. So Will Snook, the founder of Traffic Safety Store, was one of my clients at Automni. And when Automni sold, he was like, well, what do I do now? Because it was sold for the tech, not for the services. And I was like, I need a job. Like, I actually don't really have anything to do right now. This was after Toshibako had sold. And I was like, I've got nothing to do. And I've got like a bunch of money. Like, can we partner up on this thing? Cause like it'd been like a $3 million business for, 10 years. Like it just, and the main reason is actually when I tell this to people who understand SEO, almost nobody believes me. But it's one of those like really amazing things. So like the first time I ever met Will, and even like after we had helped them, we did like a really big microsite build. That was a bunch of the functionality in Molecule. But even after all that, I remember still getting there, after when we started going through the due diligence and I'm trying to understand why is this stagnant? Like these are good products. You've got huge customers, like in terms of like the logos and the brands, and the UX on the site was completely god awful was part of it. So it was still on web forms, this was in 2012. So it's still on web forms, which is crazy. That wasn't on MVC yet. And it's still probably running IIS 3.5. There was no
what does that even mean? You just said 3 or 2 acronyms there.
Oh, so web forms. So web forms are? So like Microsoft's code base, so like .NET. So there's like .NET and web forms is the old one where essentially every single page, every web page you see, whether or not you see a form on the page is technically actually a form. And like anything actions that are happening on those pages, you're submitting that form. It's all being rendered through what's called the view state. Like .NET does a lot of really good things. It's very secure, but there's a lot of slop there also, especially in the web forms version. So when they went to MVC, which is a different framework for how the pages are built and rendered, it stands for model view controller. So you have models, the models have views, the views have controllers. It's object-oriented programming. It's like, that's like what changed computer software engineering and development and the internet and everything forever. So like the tech stack was super antiquated. And the other thing that was the really funny part was that, I was like, where, because they were spending, I don't know, at the time, I think it was 40 grand a month on paid search. It's like, man, you're spending so much on paid search. You've got no organic traffic. And he's like, well, yeah, so what? And I was like, that's like 74% of the clicks. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, show me how you use Google. And he would go to Google and I was like, search for a pair of like a running jacket. And he does it and he clicks on an ad. And I'm like, why did you click on that one? And he's like, well, those are the only ones I trust. What do you mean those are? He's like, they're paying. Those are the advertisers. They're paying to be there. Those are obviously real businesses. So because they're paying to be there, those are the only ones that I click on. And he's like, I just assumed everybody did that. And I said, no, it's the exact opposite. Actually, you get that. There's about 4% of clicks on average that are going to those. So like, there was just all this growth that could be unlocked between expanding the product catalog, increasing the changing some of the products, like creating some subscription revenue, finding ways to smoke test new products, new suppliers, new partners, new verticals using microtech. Like, because there's so much, that whole industry is so unsophisticated in terms of who we were competing with. Like our biggest competitors really were eBay, Amazon, Grainger, and Uline. And like if Uline ever got their fucking SEO shit together, they would own that entire market. They have the best site, the best products, phenomenal shipping, and like everything, like all of it. Like their SEO is just garbage. And I don't think they care. They're $3 billion. They're friends with Hall & Oates. I think they're having a good time. So the stepping into Traffic Safety Store as a partner and taking over digital and being like, all right, like I'm going to do what I like. I'm going to do what I know that I can do now, which is I know I can build like a CMS. Like I know I can extend legacy websites and content management systems. And I know I can design them and build them from scratch. Like I've done it a couple of times now. I feel pretty good about it. And he was willing to take that risk with me. So that was like a really fun 5 years and I was having a good time and was going to ride it out because I still think that company's heading toward a big exit. The reason I didn't ride it out was like November of 2017. I don't remember where we were. Me and Kelly, my wife, were somewhere, and we'd gotten a call from my brother-in-law, her little brother, who was like employee number 3 at the agency and was my COO essentially all the way up until 2020. We just had like some big client like just call it and cancel, like something like some big thing, just like the bottom fell out, like something just shit the bed. Something went really wrong with the agency, and my wife got really upset with me because she's like, I just remember. I don't remember all the details, but I definitely remember her being like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, at that point, FTF, which I had never worked at full time. So I'm from the future back then, was something that I started in 2014, didn't actually take on clients for until 2015, didn't hire anybody until 2016, and didn't go full time until this conversation in the Q4 of 2017, where at that point the company had gotten to a little over 2 million in revenue and like 20 full-time employees. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like you have another company that like is your side project, but like these are people's lives. Like there's probably also potential. So for a host of reasons, it made sense to jump ship on e-com and be like, all right, I'm going to go, I guess, do this agency thing that I really didn't want to do again after the first one, because that went so wonderfully. So I think part of where Super Limited has sort of come to like this, well, part of it's just having like near debilitating ADHD. And I think the other thing is just, it's become this avenue where I don't have to slow down ideas. Like if I have ideas, I can usually figure out a way to test them. I think my biggest challenge right now is figuring out what to prioritize. I mean, that was one of the biggest things from Elliot's event was, I got asked a question I had a really hard time answering, which was, if you just sold everything, if you literally just dumped it all and had a pile of cash, like what would you do? And I really thought about it. I was like, there are actually like if I had to start all over again, there are a few projects that I'm working on right now that I would probably start again. Even if I had to start over, I would do them again because I really like them or believe in them. And so I think that's what I'm going to do.
you just showed your genius right there, right? Like you back that you see Traffic Safety Store and immediately you're like, here's 19 ideas on how I can make this website better. And so, transitioning to now, that's what you said you're trying to do. You're trying to like get these ideas out of your head for every entity or new entity that you see. And now you're trying to install people there. Can you walk through some of the businesses you're working on now that you're part of, and you're the idea supplier and someone else is executing? Can you walk through a few of those?
So the ecom, just to come right back to ecom. So underfit.com is men's undershirts and underwear. I'm wearing them right now. I literally bought the company after I was a customer. So I was a customer for a while, and I got to know the owner just because the previous owner, Paul Beck, who's still a partner in the business, he was a very charismatic guy. He's a personal injury attorney in the Twin City area. But the guy was so passionate about this product. Like he really brought this product to a whole other level. Like the amount of time and research he put into product development and doing the pill testing and finding the right factories and the right manufacturers. Like we literally sourced, I didn't know any of this shit. Like, but it's fascinating. Like we literally sourced the wool essentially that gets spun into the fabric that we then make cut to form the shirts. It's a wild ass process. And
I want the listener to know that this is not an excited Nick you're talking to. When he told me about this in person, he was like jumping out of his chair, telling me how amazing these underwear he was wearing was, and that's what sold you. So, do you want to rant a little bit on how amazing the underwear are, Nick?
I'm a briefs guy, and I'm a red-blooded American. I sweat a lot, and I just have all the fancy underwear from whether it's Express or any of the other, even Hanes MeUndies. It's all the underwear is relatively great. It's little nuances if you're into like comfort. And for me, it's things like stitches, tags, and we use the same material that we make our undershirts out of to make the underwear. So it's a pro modal that we actually spin ourselves. So it's 95% polyester, and then it's got like a little bit of lycra and nylon in it. So it's this breathable material that wicks sweat. It doesn't show sweat. So if you're soaked in sweat, you actually can't see it. With the underfit stuff, it's still there. You're still wet, but you can't see that your undershirt is sweaty, and it doesn't come like all the way through. So like if you're somebody who usually sweats a lot and your cotton undershirts are showing pit stains and that bothers you, or you want to keep our average customer was lawyers. That's why I think Paul bought the company originally. It was, it's for people who usually wear undershirts that want to keep them tucked in all day. I'm not like a big undershirt guy. Like if I have to wear a tie, fuck yeah, I'm wearing an undershirt. But the briefs was the biggest thing. Like I couldn't find underwear I liked, and then I did. And I was like, man, I really like this. There's not really like a ubiquitous brand for underwear. Like you've got Hanes and Fruit of the Loom, but like you don't think quality and comfort when you hear those brand names. It's like, maybe there's an opportunity. And then I'll give you the $100 million idea with Underfit is, so the main reason we bought the company was not even about the products, which I love and are great. It was because it has a trademark. It has the trademark on the word and on the word mark itself. And that is on Underfit. And what you can do when you have the trademark on the word Underfit is you can pair it with other words that you can't get trademarks on, like the word armor. And suddenly we can have the Underfit armor line of gray t-shirts, undershirts, underwear, socks, whatever we want to do. And I feel pretty good about the ability to start ranking for some Under Armour brand terms and become a pretty big thorn in their side and force a strategic multiple and exit. So that's what I'm probably going to do with that one. So that's one of the brands, like we need a CEO. That thing's been literally running with nobody behind the wheel for 2 years. We just got everything back in stock. Every SKU finally back in stock for the first time ever, thanks to COVID, like a week ago. We sent out one email. We sold 30% of the inventory. And now we just need somebody to fucking take over.
You asked me twice in a 3-day span, hey, you want to run this underwear company for me? And like, I don't have a super passion about underwear. I'm not even sure the name of. I'm wearing Duluth Trading, not Buck Naked, one of their other ones that you find your underwear and you kind of stick with it when you're an adult. And so if there's someone listening who's super passionate about Underfit, get a hold of Nick. Like, you need somebody to run this, and he's got literally the roadmap for you to execute upon. I believe get acquired by Under Armour.
I mean, that was always, it was like, hey, that's a really good goal. Let's do that. And if we end up building like a successful, super brand, loyal e-commerce brand business at the same time, sweet. The brands are ravenous though. Like, that's the thing, is we don't do marketing. Like, it's all repeat customers. Anyway, so there's that. That's one of them.
What else you got?
I've got a site that, so Marcus, who you met at Elliot's event, Marcus found this hysterical when we met in Boulder last August. And I told him, so we've got a site in the social security space. We've got a bunch of sites in the senior space, but we've got one in the social security space in particular, that we used to use to generate leads for social security, insurance, and disability for lawyers, until we realized that there was way more money to be made doing two other things instead. One was running ads optimized for that boomer audience we talked about, because they just click on all of them. So like we've seen RPVs on that site like that don't exist anywhere else. And the real big breakthrough, and this was not me, this was my partner on that site. It was his idea. He just was paying, he's an SEO at heart, and he was just paying attention to where the traffic was coming from and what was winning and doing well. And was an opportunity to provide a service that replaces social security cards. But it does so by, you fill out a form in Gravity Forms on this website. It generates the PDFs via a custom plugin that we built just directly natively in WordPress. And then it sends those to a fulfillment center that then also has integrates with the stamps.com API to generate the shipping and printing label. It sends those forms that are now all filled out, that they filled out themselves by filling out a form on the computer or on their phone, that then creates this PDF. It's sent to them, all prepackaged, pre-mailed, flat rate. They have to sign it and then send it in. But we're able to charge $37 for that. And the cost is, I think, 64 cents. So the margins there scale all day, and there's 220,000 people searching for that every month. So like there's these businesses that you just solve a problem once, and you can be like, it would probably make sense for us, and we might, but like it may make sense for us to invest in more of a moat there, because there's not a big one. But like that's like there's just these little corners of the internet you can stumble across, like, which is why me and Lee and some of my other partners, like I think we've become obsessed with this sort of traffic first approach to identifying opportunities, which is like, if we can find a way to get traffic for it, we'll find a way to monetize it.
How did you stumble into the idea of the actual replacement cards, or just having them fill out a form? How did you actually stumble into that idea?
So it was just doing the keyword research and like mapping out what is the total addressable market. And when you're looking at social security keywords, how to replace a social security card, a lost social security card, that's just in that universe. And it's like, oh wait, that's got good volume. It's pretty difficult. Let's see who's ranking. Oh, these are the sites that are ranking. Those aren't very good pages. Those don't have very strong link profiles. We could probably do a better job with that and leverage some of the other depth that we have, because it's a directory site. Like we can leverage all this content depth that we have around the directory and the size of our site's footprint to probably outrank that. And he tested it, and we put up, like, the very first version was like, we put the buttons up and just counted clicks when there was no product at all. It was like, oops, sorry, check back later. Just there's easy ways, right, to smoke test ideas without having to write a single line of code. That
was one of the favorite ones you told me. I don't know if you want to share any numbers or not, but it's incredible what you can build just by doing proper keyword research and stumbling into things. But you also, there's an intangible there that you have that most people don't have, is like, they'll be focused on selling their things to boomers or to old folks, right? And they'll stumble on this keyword and they'll be, great, I'll write this keyword, give them the information and then hope to bring them back to what I'm doing over here. You're able to shift and make money in a completely different way. And then, like, your brain just continues to provide those ideas. Like, do you think that's intangible to you? Do you think that's something you have, or something other people can? How can they start thinking out of the box like that?
It's not just me, and it's not because I don't think that I have a talent for generating ideas. I think I'm just very good at stealing, and the things that I'm very good at stealing are business models. And I think that is something that needs a little bit more clarification just in general, because people are always like, "Oh, I don't want to tell you my idea. You're going to steal it." People don't steal ideas. Most ideas suck. Most ideas are worthless, or they're great ideas that nobody will ever figure out how to execute. What people do steal, and what I steal all the time, are business models. When I see a business model, I'm like, oh, there's a way to monetize that thing. Well, how can I create a product? Cool. That product is going to sell to this audience. Where is that audience? How do I go make that audience my audience? That's probably, again, I feel like that's just an obsession with acquisition and conversion, though, which is all sales is.
I think you have an obsession with this in general, right? Like, I can't turn it off. I don't know why anybody would want to, but again, you make me feel like I'm not working hard enough, and that's probably a good thing. That makes me work hard. You do so much stuff. So before I jump into a couple businesses I think are cool of yours, like, or I'd really like to talk about, what other ideas do you have just floating in that wonderful brain of yours that's not being executed on? And you're like, man, if I just had people, here's 10 ideas.
Super funny. So on LinkedIn today, I wrote this like little. I don't post on there like ever. And like I wrote like a little text post on there today about like, move fast and break things. Like this is the right way to approach finding success. And I went through a bunch of success stories, and I got this great comment from Gareth Doyle, another smart SEO guy, who was just like, "That's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing. Like, what about failures?" And I was like, "Oh man, that's so awesome." Like, and I was just like, here's like 10 failures off the top of my head. Like I have an endless list of ideas that just never got the time and attention that they needed to go anywhere. One of my favorite, like was like more of a passion project, was AppDia. I couldn't get appdia.com, but I did get appdia.net way back when. And it was like right when I was coming off the sale of Fisher Baco, and I was obsessed with UGC. And I was like, man, like I have all these ideas for apps and software that I wish existed in tools. I'm never going to do anything with them. But what if I could just go put them out there somewhere? Like essentially like Quora, but like, here's all these ideas. As I have app ideas, here's the app idea. And anybody who wants to can either ask questions or they can take it and run with it. But like, here's just a place for people to come share ideas that they have for software. And it got to a place where it was doing a couple thousand visits a month, and I had like decent like I had new content flowing in every day. But it never was given enough attention to actually become anything. And I think that is like the Nick Eubanks playbook. It's like, I'm going to do 100 things. The ones that I like the most, I'll actually focus on. Anything that I actually focus on seems to work. But the biggest thing I've learned now, thanks to one of my most brilliant friends, a guy named Joel Clark, is he made this analogy and like compared me to a lighthouse, and that stuck with me in like an incredible way, where I was like, oh, like that actually really does make a ton of sense. And the downside to that is understanding like I can be a lighthouse, but I actually need to find out like how many things can I have in that circle that I'm moving around and constantly shining my time onto individually. Like, I don't think it's 15. It's probably not 10. It might not even be 5. So like, that's my biggest thing right now is like figuring like, I think I know the 3 that I really want to focus on, but it means I still need to find these people for all these other ones.
You create a lot, right? So just looking at, one of your pages here that I pulled out, just nickeubanks.com /products. You've got Traffic Think Tank, which I want to talk a little bit about. You have your keyword strategy, your master keyword research, turn ADHD into your greatest strength book, Agency Builder, another book about 2020, which I'm probably going to buy just to read what your crazy brain thinks about 2020.
Right, it's right there. Actually, yeah. I'll save you the purchase and just give you I'll give you you'll get the full download right here. So this is it.
Just read it real quick on Zoom here. Oh, nice. Nice. I still think everyone should go buy it, even though it says the same thing on every page, basically. No, but like you do so much. So I was going to save this question for the end, but I think this is appropriate time as we're talking about all the shit you're doing or want to do. What do you think it is that allows you to just create, absent of worry and judgment and any of the other things that hold people back, like, their worthiness or their fear of failure, or like what allows you to just sidestep all of that and just create and not worry about any of it?
I mean, according to the folks we hung out with in Heber City, it is actually fear of failure. If I do so many things, if I do enough things, some of them have to work, and then I don't have to worry about attaching my identity to any of the things that failed, because it's like, oh, like it's all right that they failed. I'm not a failure because I did a couple things that actually didn't fail, which is, I think it was like, that was like pretty earth shaking for me out there. And that's, I think, coming back here, and there's all sorts of things that I would love to, I can't talk about publicly yet, but I took those conversations very seriously and have set a lot of wheels in motion to take action. So I'm feeling pretty nervous and apprehensive now about like, if I only focus on 3 things, like what would that look like? I don't know if I've ever done that. Like, I mean, I never did a good job having a full-time job, because while I was at the job, I would do my work, but there was always other things. There was more capacity. I'd get home. I'd usually be doing, when I had jobs for other people, I was selling so much weed that there was really no rest anyway. So.
That's amazing. All right, let's shift a little bit. So you have Traffic Think Tank, which, unbeknownst to you, I'm going to join today. I want to get my team member in there learning some stuff too.
Really good idea to join before the event, because the tickets to the event are $80, or they're just free if you're a member. So like, you're effectively saving $30 on going to the event anyway. And the event, I promise, is worth it.
Just you being in there and being able to, pick your brain every once in a while would be worth whatever, $120 a month. But can you give us an overview of what Traffic Think Tank is? And then feel free to pitch your event, man. I didn't even know you had one.
Yeah. So it's an accelerator. It's an accelerator and an academy for, sort of leveling up your SEO game. So I will say that the title that we were lovingly given by some of our members internally is the one that now like dons the hero of the homepage, which is a place for the best SEOs in the world to connect, meet, share work, share stories, level up their game. We've got senior folks in there from Uber, Apple, Google, HubSpot, Intuit, Airtasker. I mean, you name it. I was talking with a guy from, I think, gambling.com this morning. Like there's wild people in there that you get access to, and not all of them contribute all the time. Some just lurk, but there's a lot of really smart people that are really generous with their information. One of my favorite stories that is being told this week through no action of me or my partners on TTT was a couple of people on Twitter just started telling stories about like, I started an agency because of all the work I got from TTT. Like I've built there was 3 or 4 this week of people that were like, I built a $700,000 a year business that I started in January because of work from TTT. Like, or TTT sends me $100,000 a month. Like the amount of work that flows through there is such an unintended benefit that like none of us saw that coming. Like the amount of work that like I give, like the connections I make, like the amount of business. I think so I know there's been 7 agencies that I think I can name off the top of my head that have started because of TTT. But then I also think there's probably it's got to be close to 100 companies that have either bought or sold, like that have traded hands, or like new mergers that have been created. Like just crazy shit just happens all the time in there because it's just a bunch of marketing nerds who are all like, it's the people that are willing to make the investment in a community to be like, I'm spending money on this. So like, I'm going to actually go make sure I get value out of it. I'm going to contribute. I'm going to give back. There's no crypto bros in there, if that makes sense. Like it's very respectful. And I'm just continually impressed and inspired by the people in there. So yeah, we have an event. It's usually like an in-person event. It will be again next year. But it's in September, I believe. We've got a pretty wild lineup in terms of heavy hitters. So it's called TTT Live, and this will be our 3rd one. Had about 3,300 people at it last year. It was virtual last year too, but it was in Philly the year before that, which was really fun. But yeah, you should check it out.
And you're not just getting the Slack community right in the event. You've got a bunch of courses backing it up, and I think you told me in person you're doing a live. Is that once a month, or how often are you bringing in experts?
So there's about 300 hours, ranging from beginner all the way to like very expert level. And it's not just SEO. I mean, we've got courses and presentations and webinars in there on UX, paid search, app design, user flow, email, conversion optimization. Like it's become this whole like meta thing. And then the Slack is just separate from the actual like academy. Like the Slack is just where you go to discuss lessons or just link up with people, network with other people. And then every month we do a live Q&A with me, Matt, and Ian. And then twice a month for probably the rest of this year, I do office hours. So for every other Friday for 1 hour, you can just come on to a Zoom with me and we can just talk about whatever you want. Usually 12 to 14 people show up and hour flies by pretty fast.
You convinced me at the event. I haven't joined yet. Just new kid on the way, kind of slowed me down a little bit on doing anything, but it sounds awesome. And $120 a month is absolutely nothing. You should definitely raise your prices, which I'm sure you're planning on doing in the future. Look, I want to burn through some other stuff. Like I don't like to do a ton of tactics on here, but I have a few questions for you. And then I want to touch on a couple things you mentioned in Heber City. So you've been in the SEO game a long time. So random question here. Old SEO Black Hat Tactics. What are some funny ones? And what are some that maybe not so funny, but they actually fucking worked and now they definitely don't work anymore?
So matching link text to background color definitely used to work. Link injection, like not SQL injection, but like imagine like hijacking the headers of a page and dropping a link and setting it to like a really low Z index and moving it like negative 36,000 pixels off the screen. So like nobody will ever see it but Google, but that link is there. That is very black hat. That still works. I see that in a lot of pharmaceutical SERPs these days. So that one still works. Yeah, the text color one definitely doesn't work. Widget links definitely don't work in any worthwhile way anymore. Guest post links definitely still work, but it no longer, it's not just the quality of the site and the topical relevance of the site anymore. It's also the quality of the content. So like the unit economics of guest posting has changed quite a bit because you can't use like $30, $40, $50 posts anymore, at least not in most industries, because that content is actually not good enough to add the contextual relevance to make the link value, like the link's topical value actually pass. So like that, it's just changed. Like the bar has been raised, but that strategy still works. Broken link building is still probably the most wildly scalable and biggest opportunity, mind you, I think for somebody. If somebody was just a broken link building only firm, there's 2 agencies out there doing this now that claim to do it. I've hired both of them for my other companies. They're basically PBNs. It's all bullshit. But the worst part about it is I'm like, what if you just fucking took any proxy system? So go to anybody that already has a rank tracking functionality, or just spin up Scrapebox if you want to. Scrape the top 100 pages, like the top 10 pages on Google's top 100 results for, every important commercial keyword in one entire vertical, and then run them all through data for SEO and pull back any status code that's a 404. So that's your first level. And that's as deep, I think, as most people go. The real opportunity is to go to those pages that have rankings and then crawl all of the pages that those pages link to that are not in the same domain. And now suddenly you have this bevy of, you have the domains that have the links that are broken, and the domains that they're linking to that are broken. So every single opportunity just became 2 opportunities to be, hey, you should go update this link to my client's link or my link. And then, hey, by the way, if this page is down, let's see how many other links that page has. Because that's the chain that you can follow to just find free treasure troves of links is wild. Like as soon as you start looking, they're just everywhere.
That brings me to just a random question that pops in my head. I get those emails right when I own that site that you helped me sell. The inbox was flooded with those of like, hey, this link is great. Maybe you should link to our link, or hey, this link appears to be broken. Maybe you should link to us. And they're all like there's no way I was doing any of that for anyone. Maybe I'm a marketer, but also maybe the email's just fucking blue. So is are you doing something better in your cold email approach to get those, or is it just a flat out numbers game?
No, it's the pitch and the offer. The pitch is what gets you to actually read it enough to consider even responding to it. And then there's got to be an offer. And it's not, hey, can you just do this out of the goodwill of your heart? Can you please take time out of your day to do this thing that's completely not technically in your job description, that's going to benefit me, but probably, might benefit your readers, but who the fuck do you actually, like, what do you really care? Versus like, hey, we're doing this thing. And like, whether it's offering, it's so vertical specific. Like for travel, it's money. For finance, it's money. For most direct to consumer, it could be another marketing offer. It'd be like, hey, really happy with this. If you'd be willing to update this link that's broken to, this better resource that we happen to we have motivations to get this thing promoted. We're going to be promoting. We will promote your article. We'll send this out to our entire social media following on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which is 48,000. Like there could be offers that actually don't have a cost to them that will still provide enough value for those people to make those link updates.
Beyond that, what's the numbers there on broken link building? It seems like the easiest thing to go do niche edits, broken link building, things like that. What's
BLB and unlinked brand mentions, like the way that we run. So those aren't continuous campaigns. I mean, I think there's an argument that could be made where like you could build a piece of software for BLB that you could literally just run a company that is just constantly finding BLB opportunities, and you could charge people to buy lists. Like, what's the vertical? What are your DR requirements? Do you have organic traffic requirements? Cool. That for that vertical, if you want 15 broken links about credit cards, it's going to be $1,500. Sure. Thank you. Like, I don't know why it doesn't exist yet. That would be an app dia.
I'd be a customer if somebody developed that for sure. All right. Next quick question. Go ahead.
Just to finish that thought. So there's BLB and then unlinked brand mentions. Those are things that I think more realistically you should be looking at running as a campaign instead of ongoing, doing that campaign quarterly to every 6 months, depending on how big the brand is.
Easy money there. He's teaching you. All right. Next quick question. You and I talked a lot. I'm a Shopify guy through and through. I told you some of my ideas of things that we're doing over there. What's a couple things like tips for Shopify SEO that you're seeing that are changing? I know maybe it's something super technical. In fact, this morning you said, Shopify's indexing your product and all of the variants, and that might be good for your Google PLAs, but that's not good for Google, right? And so I actually learned something from listening to you earlier. Do you have any other Shopify tips that you can recommend?
Takeshape.io.
All right. What is that?
So that is an abstraction layer that runs in a completely serverless environment that lets you essentially take any disparate piece of technology from anywhere and convince it it's running on the same server as any other piece. So even though Shopify is going to be going headless next year, this allows you to essentially run Shopify in a headless environment right now. What is the practical application of that? If you want your Shopify site on your root domain and you want your WordPress blog on your root domain and you want to run your FAQ or your sales enablement content using Contentful because you've got an external agency that's doing that, you want that on your root domain, you can now do that.
What stops you from utilizing Shopify as is without a WordPress subdomain and Contentful and things like that?
Yeah, I mean the blog, the content management part. So Shopify it is incredible at what it was built to do. It is the most flexible e-commerce platform. It's the most friendly for every level. It's got fantastic inventory fulfillment management and great analytics. Lots and lots of really good things that are super important. Great checkout experience. The thing is, you can remove all of the other components. So if you take everything I just talked about was backend. If we remove the cart and the checkout, what's left? It's all HTML pages. There's no, that's the e-commerce functionality, right? So like, why not build that in an environment that is completely flexible? And you're only ever going to get that level of flexibility if it's self-hosted. There's never going to be a hosted solution that's going to be like, sure, you can come in and hook up reverse proxies, so you don't need to worry about being on the same server as ours. It just never will happen. And there's the headless way is how they're going to get around it. It's going to be like, here, just use APIs for everything, which is essentially how headless works, which is beautiful. And it's like the speed benefits that you pick up from just moving from Shopify to TakeShape, even if you didn't add a WordPress blog, that alone will probably increase your conversion rates and your rankings like almost immediately because it renders it static. Again, Shopify will probably introduce Gatsby.js or some other front-end static rendering engine at some point. I just don't know where it is in the product roadmap. And if you like money and you like making money from selling things online, like why wait to do these things that are just smart technical infrastructure investments?
So I've spent all my time speeding up Shopify itself, right? Like moving things around in the code so they load at different orders, getting rid of YouTube's JavaScript and having a lazy load YouTube thing. Obviously doing all the easy stuff. You're again talking way over my head. So I've already paid you $300 for 15 minutes. There's going to be more coming. I promise you that, because I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about right now.
All right, Ben. Well, I'm going to invite you into a little group. You can ask a friend of mine. Who is the CEO of a very large supplement e-commerce company, who is about to launch their Shopify site on TakeShape next week.
Nice. I look forward to looking into it. My friend TJ from Bub's Naturals, he brought up headless to me like 6 months ago, and I was just like, man, that just seems like more effort than is needed. It seems like there's a lot more low-hanging fruit available.
It's the flexibility that it gives you, because then suddenly you're not beholden to any one company, any one stack. It's like it opens up the world of like, oh, I can have LAMP and Ruby on Rails and .NET, and I can run it in serverless, or I can do it in Kubernetes, or I can run it on Docker. I can do all these things because everything just plugs into this central layer.
One more quick question: where do you think Google's moving in the future? Obviously, with Eat, they're looking at credibility and readability and voice. And do you see them? Where do you see them going in the future as far as like what actually is going to start showing up in the search results? And then like, in my opinion, I don't understand why they haven't built a Shopify competitor that can do this way better than Shopify, especially for a mobile experience.
We're seeing pretty strong adoption in the restaurant space of Google's checkout functionality, like their completely native checkout experience. I think they're smart enough to understand that they don't want to get into the fulfillment game, so they'll continue to pipe that all out to the other. I mean, most of the like Lyft, Uber Eats, or not Uber Eats and Grubhub and a bunch of that's going to be an interesting war. And I realize I'm not answering your question, but there's going to be one ring to rule them all there, and that's going to be the player that essentially doesn't actually do any of the fulfillment. They just become the fulfillment infrastructure. So it's the API that everybody else uses. I think Google potentially is going to be similar. So I know they've tested private search engines before. Like you can rent Google right now, like Yahoo Japan. It is Google. You're literally looking at Google's code when you're on Yahoo's website in Japan. They rent Google's index because Yahoo realized that Google has a way better understanding and approach for how to handle Japanese search results than their technology. So I think we're going to see more and more, and this is like going to sound like common sense, but like more and more of these search features that are native. And I think we're going to see Google continue to steal click traffic. Like the degradation of clicks is going to continue. And so you need to become a destination. And you can use organic search to, the best place for organic search, right, is unbranded. Like that's the holy grail of SEO is, if you're able to influence purchasing decisions before there's either brand loyalty, brand affinity, or ideally before there's sometimes even solution awareness. But I think a lot of that's going to go away as Google continues to gobble up the world. The one big exception there, though, is I do think we're going to see DuckDuckGo actually become a bigger part of the conversation in the near future as we see more and more government-driven security measures being put in place.
A year ago, I would have told you no chance that privacy is the dumbest thing ever. It's literally what makes your ads better. It makes your experience better everywhere by being tracked. And then Apple comes along and does the greatest marketing campaign I've ever fucking seen, just so that they can have all your data and run their own search engine. Yep. And like Siri's all of a sudden working a whole lot better for me. And so like, I think I would have argued that a year ago, but I totally see privacy being a major thing. And as a crypto junkie, I feel like that's going to help move crypto into the future as well, much faster than it was moving. But Google pisses me off. Like you're saying, like the searchability of very top of the funnel terms and being able to move them, to your website and then down the funnel is the holy grail, right? Those are oftentimes questions about their problem. Those questions are an endless, like you ask one question on Google and you see it and you hit the drop down for the next question.
And it generates 3 to 5 more PAAs people also ask. And then, so like the other interesting thing was like Google came out with FAQ schema. So what do we do as SEOs? We immediately exploit the shit out of it. And we've got sites, being able to render with 8 and 9 FAQs underneath their organic listing. And if you don't know this at home, kids, the more pixels that you can take up, both width or height wise on the SERP, the more clicks you're going to get. Anything you can do to increase your pixel size, even by 1. So Google is like, oh, that's right, we can't give SEOs nice things. So now they've limited FAQ renders to there's 2. It's still, but like you're still able to there are a lot of SERPs where that's now table stakes. Most recipe SERPs, like there's all these things that have become like they're Google products, Google features, but if you don't get on the train, you're left behind. And I think that will continue quite a bit. I do think we will continue to see more democratization of like independent like verticals moving sort of out of Google to become more of their own thing. Like 65% of product searches start on Amazon. One of my favorite pieces of data that we were able to uncover this year is that most of the people that start those product searches on Amazon and go down the product rabbit hole, unless they've got a really good idea about either the brand, the product, or the price, or they've got an urgent need. Like unless it's an impulse buy on Amazon, they're going to go right back to Google and start looking up the brand, the prices, the reviews. They don't trust the reviews on Amazon anymore, so they're still going back to Google. So it's going product-based search, bottom of funnel, back to an informational-based search, down the informational rabbit hole, and then most of the time they'll end up on an affiliate site, end up back on Amazon.
Do you think the government steps in here and breaks up, parts of Google? I think they're going to break up parts of Amazon based on their like private label and things like that.
Yeah, I can see it coming with Amazon, and if it happens to Amazon, like Facebook and Google are right behind. So I don't know about that.
Well, my final question for you is something you mentioned to me when we were at that mastermind of like what you wanted to do when you reach this number, which by the way, your number's bananas. What most people say is their number forever is your number per month that you want to get to, which is fantastic. But it just sounded it made me think bigger. I'll say that. But what you wanted to do after that, I thought was one of the coolest ideas I'd ever heard. I want you to tell it in your own words of like what you'd like to do after that, and if there's a seat in the passenger seat of you doing this, I would like to take that seat because I think that would be one of the most fun things that anyone can do.
I really appreciate that, Ben. Yeah, I think it would be like probably the most rewarding experience of my life as somebody who probably not going to have biological kids. I mean, I'll have kids at some point. They just won't be biologically mine. But that is definitely very high on my, I think that would like feed my soul in a big way. But so I don't have a good name for it yet. I called it the 1,000 People Project, but I realized that that's a terrible name because it's not people. It's really just about entrepreneurs. But the idea is for essentially 300 days a year, travel around the world, anywhere, to work one day, with any the process. I think I'm actually going to back up because I think I'm killing a little bit. So the elevator pitch is to spend 1,000 days working with 1,000 different entrepreneurs all over the world. The process I think is a little more interesting, right? So like designing an application process where people can come fill out this application and they can apply, and there'll be a handful of sort of metrics to qualify, and there'll be certain weights, right? Like I would rather like I'd rather work with younger than older entrepreneurs, like much younger, like uncharacteristically young, or I'd rather work with people that are in like places that don't have many entrepreneurs, like places in the world that don't have many entrepreneurs, or places that don't I think there will be some weights that I need to figure out and like how the selection process will sort of happen. But yeah, the idea is then like me and my team fly to wherever you are, and we'll spend a day working with you in your business for free. And I think the impact that I'll be able to potentially have, but more so, I think all the relationships and connections I'll make and the stories I'll hear, I think will be incredible.
When you said, I just want to do it for free, I just want to give it, like, it just shows who you are. Like, you're constantly giving. I told the story earlier in the episode of like how much you gave to me. You continue to give to me. You gave me a ton of ideas when we hung out with each other for a few days. This is the ultimate way for you to give back. And I hope you find a way to get it done. I hope you meet that magical number.
I'm gonna, I don't think I'm gonna, the biggest thing Elliot's been pushing against me on is like, what the fuck, bro? You just do it right now. And I don't have a good reason for that yet. I mean, I can make up a million excuses, but I don't have a good reason.
Well, where can anyone listening to this find more about where can they follow you? Where do you want to send them? Pitch anything you want here. The floor.
Well, if you Google Nick Eubanks, you'll see that I am a 6'2" football player from Michigan that's about to go into the NFL. But if you actually want to find me and not that very talented up and coming athlete, nickeubanks.com is probably the best way.
I would recommend following me on Twitter. I'm going to join Traffic Think Tank today and get my employee in there. I am not even in there, and I'm recommending it. So, anything else you have to pitch that people should get from you, Nick?
I mean, maybe don't follow me on Twitter. I don't know if I'm that useful on there. No,
I like it because we're into the same stuff, right? Like you're out there buying NFTs and reminting them and selling them. We're into similar topics. I wish I was into cars as much as you are, because I think your whole car journey, the amount of cars you have, that somehow you're turning this into a business where you can travel around and drive your cool cars and make it, write them all off. That's incredible. And so I think you're a good follow personally.
No, that's a big, I'll take it. Appreciate that.
Nice. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben. Really, it was a blast.
Big thanks to Nick Eubanks for coming on the show. I jumped into trafficthinktank.com right after the call. I think you definitely should too. If you have any interest in SEO, go learn from the wizard. I don't think you're going to be disappointed over there. Hey, if this is your first time listening to the show, I encourage you to check out some other episodes that have been fantastic. Episode 1 with Kayvon is still might be my favorite episode that I've ever done. Episode 7 with Taylor Holiday has gotten a lot of great feedback. If you want to hear the story of K-Lo rings. Episode 23 with Nick Coates and episode 24 with George Bryan, and another 2 episodes where I've gotten just an absolute ton of feedback. So if you're new here, go check out 1, 7, 23, 24, all of them. I think you're going to enjoy this podcast. So thanks for checking out the show. And again, I've got a big announcement coming in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to be first to know about that, go hop on my email list. You can find that link in the show notes.